Hey y'all, welcome back to Barefoot Farm. We just got back from a quick trip to Lafayette, Louisiana for spring break. We had such a great time experiencing all the city had to offer. We even got to see some gators up close and personal during our swamp tour. But most of all, the best the town had to offer was their delicious food. We are already missing the shrimp PoBoys, so we're going to try to recreate it today for dinner. Besides the shrimp, the most important part of the PoBoy is the bread. It needs to be crusty on the outside, tender on the inside, and not dense but airy. So join me today as we try to recreate this hoagie roll recipe, and I think we definitely found a winner. So to get started, we're going to put in 1 cup of lukewarm water. Now whenever you're using yeast, you don't want to kill your yeast by making your water too hot. So make sure that your water is between 100 and 110 degrees, no higher than 110 degrees. Into our lukewarm water, we're going to add our sugar and our yeast. We're going to stir this mixture to fully combine so that all of the yeast is incorporated with the water. And then we're going to let this sit and proof for about 5 minutes. You'll know in 5 minutes if your yeast is alive or not. If it's not foamy and poofy, then go ahead and throw that away and get some new yeast because it's dead. So my yeast has been sitting here about 15 minutes now. I looked at my recipe again, and instead of 5 minutes, it's 15 minutes. So you can see how foamy and bubbly this mixture is. And so that's what you're looking for when you know that your yeast is alive and it's not dead. So now what we're gonna do is add the other half of the sugar that goes in here. And by the way, I'm making a half recipe because this full recipe makes 4 16-inch hoagie loaves, and we don't need that much. So I added the rest of the sugar, and now we're going to add some olive oil. And I'll leave a link to the recipe posted below in the description so that if you want to make this, you'll have all the information you need. So 1 tablespoon of olive oil going in. And next we're going to add our flour. Some salt goes in there next, but I don't like adding salt directly into my yeast because it can potentially kill it. So we don't want that happening today. So in this recipe, it calls for bread flour. I don't know what it's going to be like if you just use all-purpose. We're going to test things out today and see how this loaf is. So since I'm making half a recipe, I'm going to do about 2.5 cups of all-purpose flour. All right, and now I'm going to add my 1.5 teaspoons of salt. Then we're going to mix this up to make kind of a shaggy dough, and that just means that it's going to just look shaggy. It's not going to look like a smooth, well put together dough. You just basically want to get everything kind of mixed together, because next we're going to put this in our stand mixer with the hook attachment, and it's going to knead for about 8 minutes. So there we go. That's our shaggy dough. So now let's put it on the stand mixer and let it go for about 8 minutes. So this dough has been mixing about halfway. We got about 4 minutes now. And the recipe says that the dough is supposed to start pulling away from the bowl. As you can see, it's sticking to the sides of the bowl. We're having a really rainy day today. So just like with any kind of bread making, your bread, the amount of flour that you have to use, coincides with the moisture in the air. So the recommendation on this recipe is to add a tablespoon or two at a time to the dough until it starts pulling away from the bowl. So I'm going to go ahead and add 1 tablespoon in here. I'm probably going to do 2. So I'm going to do 2 heaping spoonfuls in here of tablespoons of flour. And we'll let it go for the next 4 minutes and see what we got. So we're almost done with the additional 4 minutes, and I added 1.5 more tablespoons of flour to this mix. And as you can see, it is now pulling away from the bowl, and we're almost ready to start making it into our loaves. So I just took the dough off the hook, and we're going to go ahead and flour our surface pretty well, and then we're going to knead this by hand for just a minute or 2 before we let it rest. And it's a pretty sticky dough, so if you have a dough scraper, it'll come in handy getting the dough off of your hook. And it's going to help you get it out of this bowl, because we will be using this bowl again for its rest. I'm going to get this out on to the surface, my work surface here, and I'm going to get some flour on my hands, and we're going to start kneading this. I'm going to use my dough scraper to help me out so it's not so sticky. All right. Then we're just going to, if you've watched my tortilla video, we're just going to kind of do the same kind of motion with the kneading. So pull your dough over and press with the heel of your hand and over, and just keep kind of doing that. We're going to do this for about a minute. So get some more flour. And add more flour if you need it, because this, like I said, this is pretty sticky. You don't want to incorporate too much flour because it can tend to make your bread tough, but don't be shy about using the flour if you need it. This is still sticking to my hand a little bit, so. All right, so that's been about a minute. So I'm going to form it into that nice ball. Then I'm going to go ahead and add some olive oil to the same bowl. And I'm going to spread the oil around with my hand. Get it all up to size, because this is going to now proof in the oven with the light on for 1 hour to 1.5 hours until the dough has doubled in size. All right. So I'm going to put our dough in there. I like to put it in and then I pick it up and I'll turn it over. That way there's oil on both sides, because another thing with bread is you don't want your dough to get dried out, because it'll be really tough on that side. It'll be hard to work with. So now I'm going to cover it and we'll put it in the oven until it's doubled in size, 1 hour, 1.5 hours. All right, our dough has rested for about 1 hour. As you can see, it has now doubled in size. So now I'm going to dump it out onto my counter. Get that out of there. There we go. All right. I'm going to dump it out onto the counter and going to cut it into 2 pieces, because again, this is a half recipe. On the original recipe, you do it in 4 pieces. Let me get that. And then what we're going to do is we're going to shape these into balls. So we're just basically pulling the dough down and folding it up under itself. All right, just like that. So we're gonna put that on the counter and do the same thing with this one. I'm just pulling the sides up under itself. And what this is gonna do is it's gonna just make the outside of the dough a little bit tighter. All right. Then we're gonna let them, the instructions say to let them rest again for another 15 minutes or so, covered. I'm gonna put these closer. And I'm just gonna put them up under this silicone cover. Just let them sit there, and then while we're waiting, I'm gonna prepare the pan that they're gonna eventually bake on. All right, it's been about 15 minutes. And now we're going to shape our dough into 16 by 3-inch logs for the loaf. So I'm gonna, kind of just take it on each end and kind of bounce it like this, and it kind of makes it long and kind of stretches it out without having to do too much to it. And it says to slightly flatten it, so we're gonna do that because if you've ever had a PoBoy roll, you know it's not really dense. It's real airy and kind of flat. We wanna have enough surface to put our shrimp or whatever we're gonna, the lettuce and tomato that we're gonna, that's gonna go on our shrimp PoBoy. So let's make this a little bit longer if I can. I'm gonna pick it up towards the middle and kind of bounce it like that to kind of get it to stretch out because it's pretty thin on the ends. Okay, so that's probably about 16 inches. And so I'm gonna go ahead and transfer it onto the cookie sheet. I'm gonna bring it over here, and I'm gonna try to reshape it a little bit because it's getting a little wonky here. So, all right. And just kind of reshape it so it looks pretty uniform. And I think I'll do the final shaping of it on this pan. That makes it a little easier. Okay, there we go. I'm gonna flatten it a little bit like it says. Now I'm gonna cover it with a greased piece of plastic wrap, and these are gonna go back in the oven with just the light on for an hour to do another rise before they go in the oven to bake. So the rolls have come out of the oven from doing their 1 hour proof, and I've just set my oven to 375, and we'll put these in and get them baking. All right, our oven has preheated to 375, so we're gonna take our dough and put it in there, and this is gonna bake for 30 minutes or until deep golden brown, and about halfway through, we're going to rotate it. So we'll see you back. All right, y'all, we're halfway through. We're gonna rotate it. It smells good. It's got a lot more browning to do, but there we go. See y'all in 15 minutes. So the loaves have come out of the oven. They've been in there for 30 minutes, and I didn't want to cook them any longer than the 30 minutes, even though they weren't totally golden brown, because they are so thin. So I went ahead and temped them, and the temperature was right at 200, which when you're making bread, you want your bread to be between 200 and 210. So the bread had time to cool, and I went ahead and cut off the ends. And now I'm going to slice each of the loaves in half to prepare them for our shrimp po' boys. This bread ended up turning out exactly what we were hoping for. Airy and light on the inside and crusty on the outside. This is going to be perfect. Here, we're just going really simple with these shrimp po' boys. We're just adding a little mayo to the bread, the shrimp, some shredded lettuce and tomato, and I end up putting some Louisiana hot sauce on it at the very end. But this bread was absolutely perfect. It was the perfect bread for a poor boy. Soft and tender on the inside, crusty on the outside, light and airy, and oh so good. I hope you give this recipe a try. Thanks for watching.